Rosemi drove me over to Meijiro in a squad car.
この辺りだ。
奴が行動を起こしたのは下の明治通りだろう。
Sprayed the crime scene from the overpass. There was a tram traveling down a pair of tracks running parallel to the Meiji Street.
陸橋をくぐり抜けた後、道は左にカーブしていて見通しも悪い。それに上へ登る速度もあるから、計画していたとしてもおかしくはない。
だが順路はお前だって聞かされていなかったんだろう。
巣鴨に行くと分かっていれば道は限られる。
だが通常なら小菅だと思うんじゃないのか。
春には巣鴨に拘置所の機能が戻る予定だ。六式みたいな面倒なやつは前もってこっちに入れておいてもおかしくはない。
Point taken. The only other way I could think of to get there involving Kasuga Street from Korakuen. You come up with a plan on the fly then? There are plenty of uncrowded areas nearby for someone to hide until dawn. Such as, for example, Gakushuin University's campus or the cemetery in the opposite direction. In other words, he was likely already on the move by now. Cop raced over to us just then.
おう、どうした？
目白駅付近の民家から空き巣に入られたという通報がありました。
分かった。何人かで所轄の検証に立ち会ってこい。
はっ
Cop dashed back the way he
逃
came.
走時、六式は何を着ていた？
勾留中と同じ行員服だったな。ある意味特徴もあるし。
現金が数百円というのもやや少なく感じるな。
But couldn't that also imply he wasn't worried about what would happen afterward?
数日のうちに金が入るってのか？
金が入るのか、必要なくなるかはわからないが。
I wouldn't expect Rokushiki to risk the last one.
六式が立ち寄りそうな場所に警察官を配置する。
じゃあ俺たちも思い当たる場所へ向かうとするか。
If I were Rokushiki, where would I go? Damn. The Kichiki residence. Interesting. Kichiki Hospital. The Art Museum. Interesting question. Like, sure, the Kichiki Hospital was his last place of employment before being arrested. And if he was in cahoots with Kaede, he could potentially meet up with them there. He does know Stella. He does have a connection to Stella. That's something. Because, like, as far as I know, he wouldn't really have any grudges against the Kichikis. As far as I know. Like, he had an obsession with... Or no, not an obsession. Fuck. What was it? My first thought is Stella. That's my first thought. Because, right, he was in a relationship with Stella's sister. Right, and I can't remember exactly what happened. He was that's right, he started practicing all those forms of medicine. That's the word I was looking for, not health science. The various areas of medicine, right? Because of the state Stella's sister was in, his original, girlfriend, wife. I don't remember the exact connection. That's right, that's why he was studying all the areas of science, medicine, what have you. Was because he was trying to treat her disease, ultimately caught up to her. That's when he left. As far as I could think, I think the only one he'd really... Because I don't think he actually does have a connection with Kaede. I think that's just something they're trying to throw at us to throw us off the trail. And as far as I can tell, he didn't really have any... issues or grudges against the Kichikis, specifically Fumi and Chizuru. Or if he had any connections with Toko. Like, if I remember correctly, he did help in the arrangement of Toko's kidnapping, I believe. Right, because he was the psychiatrist for Shinji. So he like masterminded it all. But I don't think he would have anything specifically connected to Fumiya Chizuru. Not that I can remember. The only thing I could think of would be him wanting to see Stella or make some kind of amends with Stella. Or if there's anyone who could give us an idea on where he might go, it would be Stella, right? Even if he's not going to see Stella, I feel like if there's anyone who'd have good insight into Rokushiki, it would be Stella out of anyone. Because like Kaede said with her conversation with Rokushiki, she said she felt just overwhelmed even with that one conversation. She felt like she didn't get anything out of him. So I feel like going to Kaede for advice wouldn't be the greatest move. I don't see how the Kichiki residence is the right move. Now watch, that is like the right answer. That's the right move you want to make, is go to the Kichiki residence. But I'm thinking the move is to go see Stella. That's my thought. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. Those are the two options. I've made my move. Stella was sitting at her chair in the corner of the art museum, just like always. Though Girl and Shell was still mounted on the wall, it was concealed under a shroud. There were no plans to restore it as of now. For all she knew, they might very well just remove it entirely. Sad as it would be, though, there was nothing she could do about it. Stella loved the painting, ignoring its sordid history, of course. As chilling as it appeared, one could feel the passion behind each and every stroke on the canvas. Personally, she believed that Shinzo truly had loved Misa, albeit in a sick and twisted fashion. And of course, she herself would much rather stay untouched by that particular brand of love. She still looked up, swearing she'd heard someone say her name. There were many out there who'd call her Maris in lieu of her last name. Then she got to her feet and looked around. However, while there were several visitors, she didn't recognize any of them. Stella sat down again, ultimately dismissing that moment as her imagination. But I know that voice from somewhere. Stella got back up. I remember now. I know whose voice that was. Stella went to the storeroom behind the exhibit hall. It was dark and deserted in there. After the theft last month, they'd moved everything stored within as far away from the public sections of the museum as possible. They'd also sent their other Mamiyas to another place altogether, one with much stricter security measures.
Makoto?
Stella called out to the empty room. She'd recognized that voice. It belonged to her sister's old boyfriend, the man who had treated her aphonia.
Maris.
Eventually, Makoto Rokushiki appeared, emerging from the shadows as though bleeding out of the darkness itself. I thought the police took him away. But if he's here now, that means...
誠逃げてきた
潮時だったのでね。
Roshiki's voice was subdued.
マリス、私と共に来てくれないか。
Don't you do it, Stella. Stella unconsciously took a step
ダ
back.
メ誠は悪いことしたから
Good girl. Stella shook her head. She was scared. She knew exactly what it was that this man had done. As such, she entertained no delusions that he wasn't capable of turning his fangs on her at a moment's notice.
君ならばそう言うだろうと思っていたよ。
Rokushiki smiled sadly.
潔癖なところはセレスにそっくりだ。
And then, he uttered her sister's name.
姉様なら決して許さない
私は彼女の分も生きると誓いましたからね。
Roshiki's lips curled into another grin. Stella looked away from him.
姉様の望みはただ一つ
私は罪深き者に改心の機会を与えているに過ぎないのですよ。
それは人がすることじゃない
Stella shook her head, still looking at the floor.
誠あなたは大天使にでもなったつもりなの
神罰を与える者という役目を考えればそうかもしれませんね。
あなたは間違ってる
That was all she could say to him.
人間という自らの器を鑑みれば
だったら
Stella looked up to find Roshiki's face right in front of her.
やめられないのですよ。すでに これが習慣となってしまっていますから。
Rokushiki shook his head, his countenance blank as a virgin canvas.
誠、
それにどうしても取り返さなければならないものがありますからね。
Rokushiki stepped forward. Stella instinctively closed her eyes and tensed up.
探さねばならないものもありますから。
Rokushiki had already had his hand on the back door by the time Stella opened her eyes.
ではさようならだ、マリス。ここにも追っ手が来そうだからね。
Rokushiki vanished out of Stella's sight on that final note. Man, what the fuck good is y'all emergency exit if it doesn't alert anyone? No wonder you got robbed so easily. People going in and out of the goddamn emergency exit like it's nothing. Because that's what we were told that room to the storeroom is, that door. It's an emergency exit. And they just getting in and out of it like it's nothing. Oh, God. Ozumi parked his squad car outside the Tokyo Metropolitan Art Museum.
ここに六式が現れるのか？
Ozumi asked that after getting out of the car.
そんなのはわからねえよ。
Two ties, to be exact. And strong ones, too. Namely, Mighty Stella and Girl in Shell. I didn't think he'd attack Stella, but then again, I couldn't trust that guy any further than I could throw him. We entered the museum and looked for Stella. Fortunately, we found her in her usual spot, sitting in a chair in the corner of the exhibit room featuring Girl in Shell, which had been covered in a shroud since the last time I'd seen it.
ステラ、
Stella looked up at me and rose to her feet.
なあ、
Suddenly, I noticed something was off about her.
何かあったのか？
Stella swiftly looked away. Her eyes were trained on the shroud covering the wall. I knew that Rokushiki had ties to this place. That was why I'd come by to begin with. Could he actually have...
六式が来たのか？
Stella feebly nodded.
そうか。何もなくてよかった。
Didn't know what I would have done if he'd gotten his hands on her.
ごめんなさい。
いいんだ。危険な目には合わせられない。
I gave Stella a reassuring smile.
六式がどこへ行くか言ってなかった。
言ってない。でも取り返さないといけないものがあるって。
取り返す？
It must have meant Misa Nakahara. Misa Nakahara. Not Girl in Shell, Misa Nakahara. Obviously the slippers. He needed to get those slippers back. Okay, yeah, the Girl in Shell statue made of Misa Nakahara's corpse. Rokushiki hid it before his arrest, yeah.
間宮心臓の逮捕後に亡くなったミサの遺体を使ったからの少女か。
It had been Saito, or rather Rokushiki, who'd stolen and hidden it prior to his arrest.
奴の逮捕後も捜索を続けていたが、結局見つからずじまいだったはずだ。
I still got chills when I remembered that statue. That perverse embodiment of madness crafted from Misa Nakahara's grave wax.
あれを保管するのだって管理が面倒なんだろ？
結局は死体だからな。湿度や温度を一定に保っていないと腐敗が進行してしまうはずだ。
Did that mean Rokushiki had found a good place that meet all those conditions in the short time between the theft and his arrest?
都内のそういった場所は全て調べたぞ。大学の研究室、病院、墓地や防空壕跡までもな。
もう一度当時の記録を調べ直そう。今からしらみつぶしに場所を当たるのは無理だ。
そうだな。
ありがとうな、ステラ。
I bowed to her.
レイジ。
分かってるさ。あいつにはしっかりと法の裁きを受けさせなければならない。
While I may have killed my fiancé, it still wasn't my place to bring the hammer of judgment down on him. Besides, I'd already made my peace after I got him arrested.
行くぞ、魚住。
We need to get out of there and find whatever clues we could. Ozumi and I returned to the MPD.
まだお前の席はないんじゃないのか？
今週から勤務は始まってんだ。心配いらねえよ。
He said that, yet Ozumi made no motions to get out of Yaginuma's special chair. And you got one hell of nerve acting like you're king of the hill when you've only been back for a few days.
おそらくあの時の資料は
Ozumi pulled an envelope out of a stack of paperwork.
お前には必要ないかもしれんが、見直してみるか。
そうだな。
Yeah, no, it's definitely good to get a refresher. Well, hell, it's been about 2 years, hasn't it? It's actually been about 2 years since I played that. I love how it's been 2 years since those incidents, but it's also been 2 years since the Shirobune localization got released. Just about, anyway. Because, yeah, that would have been June of 23. God damn. I took the envelope and pulled out the files housed within. Documents provided an abridged summary of the murders that come to be dubbed the Girl in Shell case. So I was so familiar with it, I only went over the most relevant portions. Long story short, Girl in Shell, Shinzo Mamiya's masterpiece, published after the war, was actually based on a statue. He'd fashioned said statue from the corpse of Misa Nakahara, an art restorer who'd served as his assistant at the time. The body, perfectly preserved in grave wax, was recovered from Shinzo Mamiya's basement when he was arrested. But Makoto Rokushiki, going under the identity of psychiatrist Tamaki Saito at the time, stole the corpse before it could be examined. And since he'd been dead set on never breathing a word to the police, the statue was ultimately never found, even after his arrest. What's more, Misa Nakahara was not only actually Misa Rokushiki, Makoto Rokushiki's younger sister, but also Tokuchiki's biological mother. Right. Okay. That's the big part I had been forgetting. Like, what was Misa's connection to Rokushiki? She was his younger sister. Yes. Okay.
俺も一部しか知らねえが、奴は一切の供述を拒否していたからな。
あの場で奴以外にミサの殻の少女に対してパラノイアを抱いていたのはいないさ。
There actually was someone involved with the case who'd been equally obsessed with it, but he'd settle for a different girl in shell instead.
一体どこへ隠したのだろうな。
It had to have been somewhere in Japan that the cops would never dream of looking. Not to mention me. Go on. Go on. Oh, was it Wednesday? Masuki stopped by Kichiki Hospital. He had a therapy session scheduled for the day. Though he was better than he used to be, the thought of coming here still made him depressed. Honestly, he suspected these sessions were only having a negative effect on his mental health. You know that couldn't possibly be true, though. Masuki checked in and took a seat on the waiting room bench. His nose stung from an unsettling aroma. It was the reek of antiseptic, which was a staple to hospitals. This can't be good for me. Masuki attempted to calm himself with a deep breath, but the subsequent lungful of the stench only served to nearly send him into a coughing fit. He looked up at the sound of that familiar voice.
Fuyumi-san.
Fumi Kayahara was approaching from down the hallway. Fumi took a seat next to Masuki. What made you want to adopt Michiru? That question still weighed on Masuki's mind. After all, Shari had an adopted daughter in Yukiko. Though he knew she ran a nursery, it still didn't explain why she would do so much for the girl. Fumi faced a door in front of her. Yukiko Kayahara, Fumi's daughter, is currently behind bars. Though it was likely she'd be deemed mentally incapable for answering for her crimes and let off, that didn't mean it'd make life any easier for her when she got out. Suddenly, Fumi shot her arm forward and pinched Masuki's nose.
何か力になりたいとか思ってるんじゃないでしょうね。いや、それは探偵なんて不安定な職業の、それも助手が頼られることなんてあると思う？
Fumi spat out those harsh words with a smile.
グーの音も出ないよ。
Masuki could do nothing but shrug. After all, Fumi had a huge lead on him when it came to finances.
まあ、時坂さんのところクビになったら考えてあげるわよ。そうならないように努力するよ。
It was then that the door to the examination room opened. Nichiro froze in place when she emerged and saw Masuki.
Yeah.
Nichiro immediately clung to Fumi.
あらあら、知らないおじさんは嫌だって。知らないわけじゃないと思いますけど。まさかまさきさん、この子に手を出したりしてないわよね。するわけないじゃないですか。じゃあいいけど。
Fumi ruffled Michiru's hair. Michiru's closer to Fumi than me, isn't she? But that shouldn't be a surprise. I mean, she is her mother, adoptive or not. Still, it's a bit funny considering how she knew me longer than her. Michiru suddenly held her hand out to Masuki. Though confused, Masuki held her hand in response. Michiru looked straight up at Fumi.
手を出すってのはそういう意味じゃない。
どういう意味？
どういう意味？
なんで冬美さんまで聞いてくるんですか？
あれかな、冬の山小屋で二人身を寄せ合って温め合うってやつ。
勘弁してください。
乳くり合うのは構わないが、場所をわきまえてくれないか。
An annoyed Kaede emerged from the examination room at the exact moment.
いや別にそんなつも
いいから診察だ。お望みとあれば何でも投薬してやってもいい。
普通にお願いします。
Masuki entered the examination room and took a seat on the sofa.
最近調子はいいようだね。
ええ、おかげさまで。
天下の往来で乳くり合える程度には回復した。
だからそういうのではありませんから。
ま、人の惚れた腫れたなどどうでもいいさ。それがこちらの領域に踏み込まなければ。
Psychiatrist I can handle. Couples therapist. Ugh. Which honestly, I get that.
いや、そんな愚痴をここで言われても困るんですが。
心配しなくていい。本格的な愚痴は患者のプライバシーに関わることだから話さないさ。
そういう問題じゃないと思いますが。
なんだ、診察をしてくれと言いたいのか。残念ながら君に対する診察はすでに始まっている。
この雑談ですか？
ご明察。君はすでに人並みに生活が遅れているようだからね。
I'm sort of tempted to ask why I even need to be here if that's the case.
そうそう、先日警察に行く用事があってね。
ええ。
カウンセリングを頼まれてね。ああ、君に話すということは彼女の同意も受けているよ。
何かあったんですか？
君には自分の状況を知っていてもらいたいということだ。どういう関係だったんだ？
ただの元同僚ですよ。
Masuki knew that Kaede was hoping what Kaede was hoping to hear, but that just wasn't the truth.
それはそれで興味深い。
That is an interesting
なぜ
question.
彼女は君をそれほどまでに気にかけ
I
ている？
genuinely want to know too, because it's clear that Sei has some kind of obsession with. I don't know. Well, yeah, it definitely seems like some kind of. She has some kind of feelings for him in some way, right? But why? But why? Because it's very clear that from Masuki's description, there's like they only worked together for a short amount of time before she took her trip abroad. And then afterwards came his whole incident regarding, everything going on with well, I don't even remember what the village was called. But everything regarding the village and all that. Hitogata, there we go. So it's very curious that she puts so much trust in him, so much faith in him. She seems to have she puts all that trust in him. It's interesting. Very interesting.
それで彼女が何なんですか？
Asuka ignored Kaede and urged her back toward the topic at hand.
そうだね。一言で表すと、彼女はとても優れた映像記憶の持ち主だ。
映像記憶？それが贋作の制作に役立っていると言うんですか？
そうだろうね。私は絵についてはよく知らないが、インプットもアウトプットも極めて優秀だよ、彼女。
それは油絵のような表面がデコボコしているものでも可能ですか？
彼女であれば凹凸の高さ、色、筆の方向、すべて見て覚えているだろうさ。おそらく写真から立体物を作ることだって可能だろうね。
Asuka knew Sei Maizono was a talented art restorer, but not even he would have ever imagined her skills were that amazing.
もっとも、彼女は贋作については何も認めなかったがね。
Kaede chuckled.
そのカウンセリングというのは警察でよく行っているんですか？
いいや、私も今回が初めてだったよ。欧米では精神医学の方面から犯罪を捉える試みは昔からあるのだが、犯罪心理学は戦前から研究を続けている先生もいるのだが、そうだ、君は以前斉藤先生の診療も受けていたね。
ええ、ごく一時期だけですが。
By this point, Masuki associated him far more with Makoto Rokushiki, his real name.
あれをどう思う？
どうとは？
なんだっていい。診察中に何かなかったのかな？
特筆するようなことは 何も。
At the very least, he'd come across as an ordinary doctor back when Masaki was still seeing him. More than this one, anyway.
そうか。
Yeah, but this one's hot.
何かあったんですか？
私は何も聞かされていないが、警察関係者が何人もここに現れてね。
そこまで言っておいて言わないんですか？
そちらに関しては君に話していいとは言われていないのでね。
Whether he liked it or not, Masaki couldn't help but be curious after hearing all that.
彼には興味があったんだよ。ここの前任者でもあるし、未曾有の犯罪者だ。
You are just a little fucking gossip, aren't you? Normally I don't like that, but God, your looks make up for it.
精神医学から見て、あの人の分析はできますか？
通り一遍の分析なら誰にでもできるさ。だが専門家としてはカウンセリングを行わなければ何とも言えないよ。
Kaede shrugged and shook her head.
そう思っていたのだが、あれは無理だ。こちらの手の内など知り尽くしているし、何よりも
Makes him sound truly inhuman when coming from another psychiatrist.
今日はこのくらいにしておこうか。
Kaede glanced at the clock before saying that.
次はまあ好きな時に来てもらって構わないよ。
そんな適当でいいんですか？
もちろんだと思う。君が私を頼らないということは、すなわち症状が改善されていることに。
は
Well, I certainly wouldn't mind not having to come back here.
まあ父くれ会いたいのであれば止めはしないがね。
Ma'am, the only woman I want to flirt with is you. I don't care if I'm talking from Masaki's perspective, from Reiji's perspective, I don't care. Like, listen, I keep coming here. Yeah, I'm gonna keep coming sooner if you catch my drift. Let's keep going.
あ、だからそういうのとは違いますって。
You have it all wrong. I don't care about her. It's you that I want, Doctor. You know, that's how it typically go down. Rosemary and I spontaneously headed over to Kichijoji after we finished poring over reports to the MPD.
お前待機じゃないのか？
うるせえ。飯くらい食わせろってんだ。
飯を食うだけならこんなところまで来なくてもいいだろう。
俺の勝手じゃねえか。
Sheesh, man. Either own up to it or move on.
頭を使った後は甘いものが食いたくなるんだよ。
言いたいことはわかるが、お前は晩飯にどら焼きでも食うつもりか？
うるせえってんだ。
We traded childish barbs until we arrived at Moonworld. While things still weren't entirely normal between me and Kyoko, I couldn't afford to be picky now that crime was afoot. Besides, the cafe and its coffee made the perfect companions for a chat. I nudged Rosemary through the doorway as we entered Moonworld.
あら、いらっしゃい。
おう。
Rosemary awkwardly nodded and lumbered forward as he tried to take a seat at the counter. I later realized someone else was there already.
お、時坂さん。
なんだ、来てたのか。
ああ、お前んとこの。
Rosemary looked at me.
なんだ、会ったことあったのか。
ついこの前、総一に来てたんだよ。逃亡中の被疑者の捜索だったな。
Wow, so he's actually taking his job seriously, huh?
というか、レイジよ。お前、人を雇う金なんてあったの？
お前も失礼なやつだな。まあ、ろくに給料も払っちゃいないが。
そうですよ。いい加減払ってください。
3人前以上の仕事をしたら払ってやるさ。まあ、それは冗談としてだ。
Though they already knew each other, I figured it would have been rude not to properly introduce them.
どのはやめやがれってんだ。
Rosemary elbowed me in the side.
ついでに言うと京子に惚れてるから、そこのとこは気を使ってやるよ。
What?
Rosemary just about coughed up a lung at that one.
おい、てめえレイジ。
Hey, at least I had the courtesy to wait until Kyoko was out of earshot beforehand. Clearly to show some appreciation.
どうしたの、魚住くん。
Kyoko came over with some fresh coffee.
いや、なんでもねえよ。
Rosemary shook his head while snatching the sugar bowl sitting before him.
なんだかよくわからない人で。
Muskie whispered in my ear.
一応真面目なおまわりさんだぞ。
Though clearly not quite following me, Muskie nodded anyway.
そういやお前、今日は診察行ったのか？
His therapy sessions were on Wednesdays, if I remembered right.
あ、ええ。あ、そうだ。綿貫先生が六式と面会をしたと。
ああ。何か言っていたか？
恐ろしい相手だった。
So she hasn't changed her mind on that end, huh?
他には？
いえ、と
Masuki shook his head.
綿抜きって奴と面談をした医者か。
Osmi glared at Masuki before turning back to me.
そういや学会で噂が流れていたとか言ってたが。
ああ、こちらで調べた結果、疑わしい奴はいなかった。
Or rather, I didn't find proof that pointed at anyone fishy, to be exact. In any case, if she hadn't spoken to Rokushiki since their meeting, then she probably didn't even know that he'd escaped.
こいつにも教えておいた方がいいと思う。
I gestured to Masuki while looking at Osmi.
おそらく明日にでも新聞発表があるはずだ。
Osmi reluctantly nodded.
何がですか？
Yeah, it's only natural he'd be curious.
一応他言無用だぞ。六式が脱走した。
え？
Masuki let out a hysterical cry, wanted to hastily and sheepishly cover his mouth.
まあそういうことだ。
警察が認めるのか。
現場の不手際ということで済ますようだ。管理官は謹慎。まあ今は入院しているから何も変わらないだろうが。
お前も言及か。
さあな。まだ処分は決まってねえよ。始末書は書かされたらね。
とんだ貧乏くじだな。
まったく。
Osmi snorted and sipped his coffee. Pretty much learned all I could from him for the day. Much as it irritated me that we'd made no progress, I knew that was only natural, seeing on how it hadn't even been a full day since Rokushiki's escape.
よし、それじゃあ帰るとするか。
Chugged down the rest of my coffee before grabbing Masuki's arm and dragging him to his feet.
自分もですか？
今日のコーヒー代は出してやるから帰るぞ。
は
おいレイジ。
お前はもうしばらくのんびりしていけよ。
Paid for mine, Masuki's coffee.
時坂くん、
じゃあ京子。
Hell yeah. See, Reiji's great wingman. He's like, no, I got this. I got this. She's like, don't worry, Kyoko. I didn't tell him. Reiji and Masuki departed the cafe, leaving Osmi as the only remaining customer. The clock ticked something fierce in his ears. Oh, they're gonna have a moment?
あ、そうそう、お部屋のことだけど。
Kyoko produced a piece of paper from her apron's pocket. Oh, we got the little vocal track coming back.
The promised kiss of springtime that makes the lonely winter seem long. You are the breathless hush of evening, the tremors
All right, anyway.
of brick.
商店会長さんの不動産屋さんでこの辺りの物件は結構出ているみたいなのよ。例えばね。
Kyoko read the property information off the paper. Naturally, practically all of them were in Musashino or
い
Mitaka.
やありがてえんだがもう少し職場に近い方がいいんだけどよ。
中央線に乗ればそう離れてもいないわよ。
とは言ってもな俺は下町の方が性に合ってるんだよ。
この辺りだってそんなに気取った場所じゃないわよ。
Kyoko
どう
smiled.
せ味噌汁男の一人暮らしだからな。ええとこさえありゃどうとでもなる。
Worst case scenario, we could always go back to the police dorm.
そう。でももしかしたら気に入るお部屋があるかもしれないからもう少し探してみるわね。
ああ悪いな。
Yeah. Well, if she's like dropping it, it's like, oh, but maybe like something in the area. Cause right, where did she say? Where did she say the areas were? Right? Musashino or Mitaka, right? I can't bring up my notebook. God damn it, because I have my map there. You'd be like, ah, Musashino or Mitaka, is that near this area? She'd be like, oh, somewhere near the area, you know, somewhere nearby. Including the judge. Maybe you'd love an area around here.
いいのよ。私が好きでやってることだから。
Kyoko grinned again. Normally, Ozumi wouldn't have dared to take advantage of her kindness. But the situation being what it was, he figured he was better off letting her handle the issue.
ああできりゃ車が止められるところがいいな。レイジのやつから取り返さねえと。
あら、時坂くんにあげたんじゃないの？
んなつもりはねえよ。今だって俺が税金払ってるんだからよ。なんだ。
なんでもないわよ。
たく
Oh, they're cute. Come on. I swear to God, they better seal the deal by the end of this. I mean that as in like get together, not, you know, plap plap. You know
もう一杯頼む。それと、
Mom later grabbed the nearby sugar bowl and presented it to her as well.
空になっちまったから、こいつも追加頼む。
Was me. Was me. Come on, bud. You have the catch of a lifetime in front of you, and she wants you to. Don't let me down, was me. I'm rooting for you, big man.
I've been parked atop CID Section 1's visitor sofa reviewing old case files since the crack of dawn.
こいつで最後だな。
Ozmi saw some files he retrieved from the reference room on the table.
悪いな、was me.
タバコの灰を落とすんじゃねえぞ。俺がどやされちまう。
とっくに焦げ目がついてる書類もあるんだがね。
And again, it was never so bad that I couldn't read the files. It was all good.
しかしレイジよ、今さら六式の古い資料を調べて何になる？めぼしいところは全て捜査員が派遣されているはずだぞ。
Trying to read between the lines.
ここにない場所を探すためさ。
Exactly.
奴ならどこにも該当しない場所に潜伏するだろう。
んなこと言ったってな。それこそ無数にあるぞ。
まあ、そういうことだな。
At the end of the day, it seemed we were going to have to rely on old-fashioned legwork to get the job done.
しかしな、レジ、お前こっちの件に首を突っ込んでばかりでいいのか？
六式を放っておくわけにはいかないだろ
う。さらわれてる子供だっているんだろう。お前はそれでいいのか？
いいわけないさ。だが連れ去った奴に関してはある意味信頼している。
だがそいつは人体実験で子供を使ったんだろう。
お前は俺に六式の捜索をやめてほしいとでも言うのか？
いや、そういうつもりじゃね
え。Ozmi hastily shook his head. Sheesh, you call me a busybody.
こちらはこちらで見つけ出すさ。たとえ何年かかってもな。
True. If we're thinking about which one's a much bigger threat, it's definitely Rokushiki. Which one does Reiji have a bigger personal interest in? It's definitely Naori, but... I flipped through the new files Ozmi had given me.
居場所もそうだが、何のために脱走したのかを考える必要がある。
脱走するのにちょうどいい機会だったからじゃないのか。
移送が千載一遇の好機だったことは否定しない。だが、目的もなく逃げたとは考えにくい。
まさか。
奴は連続殺人犯だが、無差別殺人犯ではないよ。実際、六式事件以降、奴が直接手を下した事例は確認されていない。
Well, what if there was one victim he wanted to get, right? He didn't even kill anyone in either of the homicide cases from 2 years ago. That is also true.
殺すとすれば、妊婦か、あるいは堕胎経験者か。
He's probably obsessed with sticking to his victim criteria, much the same way as I was obsessed with Rokushiki.
病院を警戒すべきかもしれんな。
警戒するに越したことはないが、
勤務していた形跡のある病院には全て警官を張り付かせている。
Yeah, I guess it's not easy to find out who's had an abortion without checking hospitals.
あとは、ミサの殻の少女の行方か。
That was to say, the body of Misa Nakahara that Rokushiki stole nearly 2 years ago.
どこへ隠したのか、ガンとして言わなかったからな。
それを回収して終わりであればどれほどいいか。
But no, I suspect he was up to something. Though what, I couldn't even begin to imagine.
六式が拘束中に何か話していればよかったんだが、何も喋っていなかったようだからな。
そうだな。つい先日までのことだが。
I had to wonder if he seriously hadn't spoken to a single soul until that day I questioned him about Masaki 3 months ago, though.
なあ、ウォズミ。いくらいけすかないヤギ沼とはいえ、六式を隣に座らせている状況で油断をすると思うか？
普通はしねえだろ
うが。例えばだ、六式が王争の手順を全て把握していて、あの地点でヤギ沼に油断させるよう仕向けていたとしたらどうだ？
まあ、居眠りかなんかしてりゃ。
Something like that would probably be a piece of cake for Rokushiki.
警察に内通者がいる恐れがある。
I looked around and whispered that to Ozmi once I was sure no one would hear us.
なんだってそんなことになるんだよ。
可能性の一つだ。そうでもなければ。
Also
焼き玉を
true.
出し抜くのは難し
Especially
い。
considering his restraints, like they said he was bound up tight. I gotta imagine whoever bound him up then might have, put a little breather room in there.
だからって誰が
Those when we looked up and scanned the
当
office.
日王曹を担当した警官から調べてみてくれるか。
しかし、なぜそんなことをするんだろうな。
That's what we're investigating, big guy.
もともとシンパだったか、交流中に弱みを握られたか。奴ならばどうとでもするだろうさ。
だが見つかるかわからねえぞ。口も固くなるだろうし、調べていることが6式に筒抜きになる可能性だってある。
そうだな。調べていることは誰にも言わないようにしてくれ。
わかった。
I left the MPD and went to Nakano. It felt a bit emptier than usual, probably because fewer outpatients checked in during the afternoon. Let's see. Damn, today's Thursday. Kaede only came in for sure on Wednesday, so I'd have to ask one of her acquaintances for contact information in the event she wasn't around. That said, this wasn't the acquaintance I'd had in mind. Still, beggars can't be choosers, and if anything, she probably knew psychiatrists better than anyone else here.
なあ、みちる。精神科医の綿貫楓先生は今日いるかな。
楓ちゃん、いるはず。
Huh, that's good. This will make my job a whole lot easier.
どこにいるのかわかるか。
こっち。
Michiro suddenly grabbed my hand and attempted to drag me out of the hospital.
いや、待て、みちる。
覗きに行かないの？
行かない。
Though I was defying every biological impulse in me when I said that.
残念。
What, did you want to peep?
Ah.
Amy suddenly emerged from the room next door and locked eyes with me.
どうも。
Yeah, she was kidnapping me.
腕を掴まれて引っ張られてるのは俺なんですが。
更衣室を覗きたいって。うわー。
Amy took a few steps back.
いや、俺は言ってませんからね。
でも覗きたかったんでしょ
何を言わせたいんですか、あなたは。
弱みを握っておけばいいかなと思って。
What game are you playing here?
What exactly are you planning to do with that info?
ああ、貝原さん、精神科医の綿貫先生を知りま。
知ってるも何も、ここにいますよ。
Amy pointed to the door she just exited.
この子のことについて話していましたから。それと、ユキコのことについても。
She sounded a bit depressed by that last part. Things could have been easy for her with everything Yukiko was dealing with.
精神鑑定を受けることにユキコが同意したそうです。
Amy hung her head. In response, Michiro reached out and gently gripped her hand.
貝原さん、俺はとても身勝手な人間です。正義とは程遠い。だから、知り合いが罪に問われないというのは。
And I really meant that too. Though the road ahead probably wouldn't be easy for Yukiko, it was still likely the same one Fuyumi had once walked.
すみません。ありがとうございます。
Fuyumi wiped her eyes.
乳繰り合いは終わったかね？
A woman in a doctor's coat suddenly stepped out of the room next door.
あ、楓ちゃん。
どうも、綿貫先生。
今さら取り繕ったところで乳繰り合っていた事実は変えられんよ。
いえ、そんなんじゃありませんよ。選ぶならもっと身持ちのいい人を選びますから。
それもそっか。
Really not appreciating the implications here.
風天の人？
違うからな。
Guy took me into her office after I gave her an abridged summary of my plight.
六式誠について。
Guy sat right across from me.
私があの面談で無様な姿を晒したのを君は見ているはずだが。
あれから何日か経過してますから、落ち着いて考えられると思いまして。
ものは言いようだな。しかし、私の考えにそう変化はないよ。
Guy shook her head.
もちろんそれで終わってしまっては自分が情けなくなってしまうから、もちろん考えはしたがね。
どう考えましたか？
私が思うに、あれはとてもまっとうな人間だよ。
あれがまっとう？
What the hell gave her that impression?
まず第一に動機がしっかりしている。調べてみたが、彼は家族を失い宗教に傾倒していたそうじゃないか。理由がないものこそ一番恐ろしいよ。 原因があれば治療も抑えることもできる。ただなんとなくで人を殺す人間を説得できるかい？
意味もなく人を殺す人間は原因を取り除くことができないと。
病巣と同じだよ。腫瘍を取り除けば病は治るだろうが、ただ腹が痛いとわめく患者の診療はとても難しいだろう。
そうですね。
Still, couldn't find it in myself to agree with her about Rokushiki.
もっとも原因が分かっていても治療不可という場合もあるがね。
六式の場合はそのようですね。
Couldn't possibly imagine him ever turning over a new leaf.
おそらく本人も承知しているのではないかな。
承知していてもどうすることもできないのですか？
自殺志願者がただ息を止めるだけでは死ねないのと同じだよ。対象がいると殺さずにはいられなくなるのだろう。まあ一番厄介なのは周りがそれに影響されてしまうことだな。患者と接しているとその病状が移ってしまうのはよくある話だ。彼ならばそれを意図して行うこともできるだろう。
殺意の感性。
Was that why two of his former patients had both descended into serial killers?
人の心を操るのに長けているとも言えるな。本人にそれと悟らせず彼の利益のために誘導する。
厄介な相手だ。
However, I'd already known about that talent of his. Still, maybe it was how he'd influence his collaborator in the police, assuming that theory was right, of course.
どういう人が操られやすいというのはあります。
誰であれ操られる可能性はあるさ。長く接していれば弱みや様々なしがらみもわかるだろう。ま、せいぜい君も操られないよう気をつけることだ。
承知しています。
That said, I couldn't deny the possibility that he was already goading me into acting exactly the way he wanted. All without me being any the wiser.
さて、このくらいにしておこうか。
Gaia rose to her feet.
ありがとうございます。
何？礼には及ばないよ。今まで喋ったことはすべて私の妄想だからね。人を操るというのはこういうことさ。
Gaia giggled.
私よりも彼の方が経験も長いだろうし、もっと巧妙な手を使っているだろう。
肝に銘じておきます。あと一つだけよろしいですか？
何かな？
What did that mouth do?
六式誠が脱走しました。
それで？
Gaia responded after a moment's hesitation.
あまり驚いていませんね。
まあね。彼ならばいずれそうするだろうとは踏んでいた。
そうですね。
I decided it was for the best I didn't mention he escaped on his way to jail.
それで、私に何が聞きたいのかな？
The question was only natural, of course.
潜伏している場所などは想像つきますか？
それは警察や君のような探偵が調べることだろう。でもまあ、考えられるとするならば。
So somewhere right under our noses, someplace connected to him, yet one the police would never think to look.
ありがとうございました。
役に立てたとは思わないが、礼は素直に受け取
I'll
って。
give you something to take.